So you can have confident kids, even if you aren't confident yourself. And I just mentioned in kind of the intro before we blew it up, uh, that the internet blew up, that you may not have confidence yourself, but that doesn't mean you can't give it to your kids. In fact, what we're aiming for, I think, as parents, is to have our kids exceed us, to go beyond where we were. Some parents in their kind of narcissistic dysfunction don't. They keep their kids down, want to keep them nearby and make themselves always the center of attention, and to make themselves always the one that knows everything, can do everything. My dad did that. In fact, that's a fair transition to our story. But before I get there, I want to mention this quote. Like, if you doze off, this is what you need more than anything. And what you need is to know that the greater part of courage is having done it before. This is attributed to Emerson. I think that's right. I haven't checked it in a while, but I've used it a lot. And that really captures it, that the greatest part of courage is having done it before. So that what we're talking about with confidence is going to be something based in experience and reality, not imagination. We'll talk about that in a moment. Growing up, Jody and I had different experiences and similar experiences, I think, that damaged some of our own confidence. I certainly did. So though Dad was in the legislature, the state Senate in Alabama, we did learn to greet people and shake hands, and there are a lot of lessons that were great for us. There were other things that were crushing and hurt our confidence, especially with a household of alcoholics and other kinds of dysfunction going on. There was a scrambling constantly, I felt, certainly, for making like grades to keep up appearances, but having to handle all the dysfunction of the home. So there was kind of a time exhaustion game in play. And by the time I got through school, and even in school, my confidence academically was just horrible. And in fact, when I considered going to seminary, I wound up going to a school called Dallas Theological Seminary. And in those days, I think it still is, it was very hard to get into. And so partly I didn't even want to apply because I didn't think I'd get accepted. And if I got accepted, I thought I'd flunk out. That almost kept me from going, except a friend of mine named Jim Smith was able to persuade me to go ahead and apply. And then I found out that my law school test was so good, LSAT, that I was automatically accepted, and I wound up graduating with honors. That's not to brag, that's to show the discrepancy between what I thought I was capable of and what I actually was capable of. And this gets in the way. And you can see this in your kids, in your life, where you don't think you can do something, so you don't try. And so kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, you don't accomplish it. And that is the nature of the game. Jody, too, I mean, if you want to share anything, you're welcome to. But Jody, I know in certain curriculums that she was interested in initially, it was hard or confusing, and so she bailed out of it. Maybe she wanted to stay in it, maybe not. Do we ever talk about that?
Oh, I talking about college. No, I didn't want to stay in that. But no, I did kind of have the mindset of, if it's hard, avoid it. I wasn't pushed through a lot of things, not blaming my parents, but just, the greater part of courage is having done it. So a lot of times I just wouldn't do it.
Right. And that's where the struggle is. Now, our kids, though, on the other hand, though they have some insecurities, by and large, they're certainly not like ours. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so they are able to figure out how to get into college, how to get out of college, how to get jobs, how to, we have a son whose magazine in DC shut down. And as a result, he was out of work, and within days, he had another job lined up. We can't announce it yet, but he's back in motion with a new baby and a wife and a new house, and now, out of work and back into work within, a couple of weeks or something. So these folks can really go for it, and they're willing to write. They're willing to fade the heat of criticism. They're willing to share their opinions. They're willing to stand up for things. It's not that they're perfect at it or do it all the time, but by and large, what we're going to share with you, some of the principles that we've embraced and understood, are reasons our kids are, I'm going to say, probably a good bit healthier than we are. So what is confidence? Let's start there. And make sure I had this right. So before I define it, I actually thought I had a definition here. I'll come back to it in a moment if it doesn't show up. But whatever this confidence thing is, this essence of being willing to trust in, the way I would say it is you trust that you can do it. That's what it amounts to. And when you trust that you can do it, that may or may not be based on you, but somehow it's based on something. And when you can trust you can do it, you tend to take action. Without that trust, that confide, that with faith aspect, here's kind of what you can look for. You can look for someone who is insecure or faces insecurity. If you don't have confidence, you'll see hesitation. You'll see a lack of initiative. You'll see dependence. And you'll see, frankly, poor results. And if you can look at this in your kids and see the hints or directions for some of these things. Now, bear in mind, children have to grow, right? Talking about a 4-year-old with some of these things is not the same as talking about a 17-year-old. So what we're trying to do is grow them and progress in the process. So these are the kind of things that if we don't develop confidence in our kid and build it within our kids, this is what we're going to see happens. Now with it, you get courage instead of insecurity. You can get action instead of hesitation. You get initiative instead of lack thereof. You get independence and you get success. That's the power of confidence. And it's something beyond something like self-esteem or merely feeling good about yourself. It's really, believing you can get it done. That's what it really amounts to. So confidence is the belief that you can do it. There, I did have it in here. With faith, okay? It's the belief that you can do it, that you can get it done. And it's that combination of confide, with faith. There's a belief about things regarding the future. It's not just hope and possibility, but it's high likelihood. That's the nature of what confidence is. So when a child has a sense of a high likelihood, I'll get in college, high likelihood I'll be able to succeed at it. And I'm just picking on college because I used the example a moment ago. It could be anything. It could be ballet or art or writing a book or succeeding in some particular sport, or sales or anything, or just job interviews. All of those things are a matter of whether or not there's a clear belief that you can do it. I want to talk about David and Goliath really briefly. You may know this story from the Bible, and whether you buy the Bible or don't buy the Bible, it's not really an issue to me in this example, because the story itself has a compelling part of what I would understand confidence to be about. And you know the story. So David's the little guy, Goliath's the giant. His shield weighed 60 pounds or something like that, and he defied the army of God in this Elah Valley that Jody and I've been to, and they're on one side and Israel's on the other, and Philistines, and there's always, let's fight one-on-one. If somebody take me on, and nobody would take him on. Saul the king wouldn't, none of the brothers of David who he went up to visit, and David was just a kid. He's about 16 at the time. And the crux of the story is in the discussion with Saul, and the crux of the story goes like this. And Saul said to David in this discussion, because David's saying, I'll go fight him. And Saul says, you're not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. So you're a youth, and he's a grown man, and he's been a man of war and training all this time. You can't handle it. And what happens from there is David has a response. And David's response to Saul, the king, was, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. So David was basically saying, well, I have this parallel experience of dealing with bears and lions, and in my experience, God has empowered me just doing my duties as a shepherd to deliver lambs. And if God works that way, then with an uncircumcised Philistine who is basically defying or mocking the armies of God, this is a no-brainer in David's mind. It's a win. He has a trophy case of experience that gives him the basis for it, along with his, in his context, faith in God. So that 1-2 punch actually frames this discussion for us in terms of building confident kids. And what you want to take from it, and we're going to see, is they need experiences as a basis for confidence. It's not just made up. They need that basis. And lo and behold, just making sure this is recording. Lo and behold, he won the day, and the rest, as it were, is history. So you can have confident kids. Greater part of courage is having done it before, right? So here's what you need to know. First, culture is against us. We are in a feelings-focused world. People are managing businesses now by how everyone feels at work. Not about productivity, not about staying in business, not about what we're putting out there. Well, in part, but the driver, I work professionally, paid for it with leaders and managers. And my experience is the whole culture is busy trying to get them to make everyone feel good. And as a result, we're having wasted hours in team meetings trying to figure out how to feel good rather than to get something done. Because it's actually the getting done that produces the income that drives an economy that makes life work for us. So that, I'm just saying the business world, never mind parenting books, utter trust in kids and their feelings as though those are 100% accurate, an obsession on not hurting feelings, not calling into question things. We look at political leaders and what they say hurts feelings. Now, I'm not saying that's not an issue, but I am saying it's not the issue. There's more to this conversation, but the culture is just inundating us with this. And so as a result, there's no king in Israel and everybody does what feels right. Is that where we're headed? This is anti-truth and values and principles and right and wrong. So many things that I personally disdain. I may be out to lunch, but you're here because I think in part you wanted to hear what I'm thinking. And what I'm thinking is when we obsess on this part, especially if you don't know how to run your feelings, it's going to be a bit of a problem. We also have a culture that is growing a child-centeredness, so that children are the be-all, end-all, do-all of everything. And so it's all about the kids. And that, I mean, we need to be concerned about kids. They'll die without our help. But the focus here is not about having the children dictate what we're trying to do in the home. That is a recipe for insecurity for a child, because they probably have enough sense to know they probably don't need to be in charge, never mind how they act from time to time. You also need to know that we are against us. We're against ourselves because we also tend to be feelings focused and child centered. So depending on what's come down through your family of origin, your system, you can be busy worried about how do the children feel about you. If they keep feeling bad about you, what if they grow up and won't let you see the grandkids or something like that? What do you do to make the kids happy? How do we make sure the kids are enjoying whatever they're doing, whether it's study or bedtime or their meals or whatever? It's all about making sure these little blessings in our life feel good about things. And we'll talk about that, but it's not the best of all ways to equip children for life. It also, we're against ourselves because we do something I would refer to as crippling parenting. And what I mean by that is that we can follow a principle, a crippling principle. And it says, basically, if you keep doing for someone that which they best learn to do for themselves, you will make them a cripple. So if you have anything that you keep doing for someone that they really need to learn to do for themselves, you'll make them into a cripple. So let's take some examples. Tying their shoes. If you keep tying their shoes until college, they won't know how to tie shoes, or you have to have Velcro topsiders or something to Velcro. What do you have? Penny loafers. Neither of those Velcro, but you get my point. Jody, what other examples, do you see and we've worked with where you keep doing something for them and they have no idea how to do it?
Gosh, there's so many. Most parents figure out, like, yeah, I need to teach my kid to tie shoes, but we've actually had parents that they've tied their son's tie. He went to a prep school and he wore a tie every day, and they tied his tie for him every day until he graduated from high school. That's an extreme, but maybe it's just doing chores around the house, or maybe it's cooking, or maybe it's getting them to make friends on their own, not trying to organize everything about their lives. But they have to go out and initiate some things.
Yeah, I have a young man I'm working with. He's 17, and he owned up to me this week. He doesn't know how to study. And part of that is because the school system he's come through has not required it. They haven't had much homework. They haven't had good review material. It's sort of trying to teach him in class or whatever. And so he doesn't know how to study like for an exam, how to review and prepare himself, which will be a challenge in college because someone else has done that for him. And there are examples, there literally are. I've known people that have put the belt in their child's loops up through high school. You can imagine people a lot of times will wait to potty train too long. Jody, with I think our second, one day I said, "Why is Laura not potty trained?" I'm sure Laura would love me mentioning this. But she said she's not ready. And I said, "How do you know?" And Jody said, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "Well, try it. If it doesn't work, 2 days later, we'll go back the other way or something." So she tried it, and instantly Laura was potty trained. Because as long as you keep doing, my favorite example is Holmes, who didn't walk until like 16 months. Tripp didn't walk till 22 months because of cerebral palsy. And Holmes to 16 months because I stayed home and watched one day and said, "Why is this kid not walking?" And sure enough, what was happening is he had an older sister and others who just carried him around everywhere. And so he was like, a king, and, with servants, with the rickshaw handy on your shoulder type, whatever that thing was, that, you walk the king through. He was just carried everywhere. So we made a new rule that said nobody can pick up Holmes until he's crawled 10 feet to you. And within a week or so, he's walking. Because if you keep reinforcing and doing for someone what they need to learn, they'll just keep letting you. It's a reward structure. And so we can cripple our kids, and as a result, we can cripple their confidence. Here are 10 things to do. Delightfully, Jody has not seen this list, so we'll see her interaction on this as well. So this is where I want to be as pragmatic or as practical as I can be. The first is to make it a goal. You really, really want to make it a goal to grow a confident kid. You want your kids to learn how life works and then work it. Let me slow down and invite you to think about that. This is what life is about. You want to figure out how life works and then work it. And if you're a learner at all, if you're trying to figure this out, that's what you're doing. Homeschoolers, what we did, we tried to figure out how homeschooling worked, and then we worked it. And what we're trying to do is share with families, here's how homeschooling and parenting and writing and reading and the different things we do, here's how it works. Now go work it. You can tweak your own system, but this is what you want to instill in your kids. This is how it works. Teaching them that about classes. One of the things we taught them for college is it's a game, and the professor's in charge, and it's his or her way of doing it that you have to play the game. How do they do the game? How do they like essays done? How do they do their question and answer? How do they do their tests? Figure out their game and play their game. Wish it wasn't a game, but it is. And it's a fair game, because if you grow up, you become a professor, you get to write the rules for your game in your class. So it seems personally, perfectly reasonable in that regard. That's what you want to do. Set it as a goal to help your kids become confident rather than insecure in the other things we mentioned. Number 2, and Jody, jump in anywhere you want to. Understand it. Real confidence is based in skills, in reality, not imagination. Okay? It is a skills base, similar to what we saw with David, where he had this experience, right? And the experience in his past was a bit of the foundation. So when we look at helping people, our kids, understand how life works and work it, what they need to realize is they've got to grow and develop a skill. And when they grow a skill, it becomes a foundation for what they're doing next. It's not just imagining and pretending, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, when you've never done it before. It's actually about this skill growth. So when you look at your children, you're trying to develop confidence, you're going to see this theme come up in the other 8 points, that it's a skill development game, so that the more skill they get at a thing, the more confident they're going to be in that area. And I'm going to argue, and it'll bleed over. So 3, keep to one strategy. When you keep to one strategy, you are following this principle: succeed at one thing, notice it, and build on it. This is really probably the most important thing I could say, except number 10. And it's strategic. And I'll give you an example. In writing, one of the things that happens with writing, kids don't like to write because they're not confident in it. There's a lot on the line. They're scared. They're going to be criticized. They may have dysgraphia and can't handle a pen very well, or pencil. They may have a number of things going on. They think they'll sound stupid. They think something else. And so as a result, they don't have much confidence in writing. Well, if you can start succeeding at one thing and build on it, even in writing, this is like micro, macro, okay? So if you can get a child to where they're really good at just, starting sentences with capitals and ending with periods. I'm talking about a young child when you're teaching them, copy work or whatever. And mastering that thing, that becomes a basis of a little more. If they start learning how to say a thought out loud and then write it down the way it sounds and punctuates that way, and they develop that skill, they develop confidence with that aspect, and it begins to grow overall in the category of writing. But it's true with anything that they work at. If they can succeed at one thing, notice it and build on it, that's a way out. We were speaking with someone this past week, and they're sharing about the struggles their child has been having with some academic things, and mention also that he loved robotics and could figure out instructions and build things and overcome the frustration of it not working at first and all the rest. That's a great example of what we're talking about. If you can find an area in which you can succeed and then pay attention to how you did it, you can translate that everywhere else. That bit of confidence in that one area can start bleeding over into other areas, because you say, I've figured out how to learn in this context, and I can do it over here. This is what David did. If I can handle lions and bears and lambs, don't think a big uncircumcised Philistine is going to be an issue for us. Jody, anything you want to say on that one?
No, I think that's important. Just even helping your child notice, helping yourself notice, hey, I learned to do this, I probably can learn to do this, or it's very important, because I think we psych ourselves out, and our kids psych themselves out, but to point out, no, look, you learn, you can do this really well, and I bet if you keep working at it, you'll learn this. And I think and I'm not sure all your 10, but the third one's making me also, what you were saying, think, yeah, you start small, you start with pieces. You don't necessarily tackle the whole thing at once.
Well, you can't. There's not a way to master anything except in parts. That's the way the game goes. Even the way we learn to talk, we first master words, and then our granddaughter mastered the word, many words. One of them was no. And then my son a few weeks ago said she's putting two words together, and I said, "Is it heck no?" And he laughed. But
she's very emphatic with her no's.
Yeah, and her uh-ohs. So learning this game, and by the way, when I say there, notice it and build on it. So notice it is a big deal. A lot of times people will succeed, but they don't give it any credit for what it is, what they actually accomplished. And so you have to invite a child to notice, or you have to notice that you actually got through. I had to notice, oh, I passed that test. Or if you're trying to get over fear of elevators, go on an elevator, get off, and notice you didn't die. Sometimes you think, ooh, I didn't die that time. But you need to notice, oh, my theory about elevators may not be legit. And that's what, in large measure, what we're doing with confidence is changing the theory and giving a basis for it to go from, I don't think I can do it, to I think I can do it. That's the game.
You can also help your child. You can also notice that they're trying and sticking with something. They maybe haven't gotten to the success part, but hey, I'm noticing you're really continuing to work at this. You're not giving up. That's a good thing.
Excellent. Amen. Number 4, help them accept failure and feedback. So this is kind of strategic, because if you have a little perfectionist, the perfectionists are the least confident of the lot, because they're having to do something perfect. They also know that is nigh unto impossible. Therefore, they're already engaged in something that guarantees seeing themselves as failing. And having been, gold star perfectionist in my life, I know of what I speak. The way out of this, I think one way is to learn from the arts. So if you think about the arts, any art works, music or ballet or whatever, but when you're or painting, it doesn't matter. All the art, sculpting, every one of the arts, when you get engaged, it's largely an apprentice system. So you're being taught by someone or someone's, usually there's a ballet teacher, and what they're doing the whole time is criticizing you constantly. Sports are the same way. Coaches are being critical. It's not about being positive and feel good. It's about winning the game. In ballet, it's about, not falling down. It's about the grace, and it's about pirouettes, and I don't know anything about it. But it's that game that sees the feedback and the failure is simply just a necessary part of getting better and better. Olympians train this way. Others train this way in the arts and sports, especially, that they don't look at failure as a thing. It's just part of the process of learning. It's a bummer. We don't like it. It's not fun. But every bit of doing things imperfectly is part of how we move towards perfecting, not perfection, our technique or our skill or our ability. So if your kids are interested in the arts, they've got to learn to gut up and be able to accept failures for what it is. It is a step in learning. It's temporary. That you fail once does not mean you are a failure, right? It just means that's how it went. I mean, writing's that way. That's why we have erasers. Tough break. You went over the line. Oh, tragedy. No, you just learn, erase, correct, keep going. Same with coloring. You colored outside the lines. Is that a big deal? No, it's a failure, because if you meant to color inside the lines, that piece right there is vital for our kids to learn that failure is not a permanent thing. It's a necessary part in the growth, skill development, confidence building process. Number 5, and Jody didn't know this, but she alluded to it earlier. Make them work. What does that mean? It means make them do stuff.
They're probably not going to on their own just go. Some kids will, but a lot of kids won't try.
Right.
Something that seems
They,
hard or
they
seems
need
daunting,
jobs.
or
They need to learn to set the table, to make up their bed. They need to work in the yard. They need to learn to have responsibilities around the house. Childhood is not vacation, right? It's not about having servants. It's learning to be one. And the wild thing about it is when someone learns they can work and it doesn't kill them, it gives them great confidence. I was horrible at this. I hated work. I hated work in the yard. I hated I hated shucking corn. We'd have neighbors family in the country that grow corn, and we'd go get a bunch. We'd have to shuck it, and mom blanching it and putting up whatever, you do in Alabama. Canning, I think they call it. Those in jars. I never sorted that out. But all that stuff I hated. And yet, as I learned to do it and got through with fixing a wall or working in a garden or that material, or actually when I started getting paid and worked construction for a while with someone that had 10 times my energy, I learned what it was to work hard and not die, because I thought it would kill me. And that became part of my confidence. I found that if you work hard, things will yield to you. You hang in there and you just work hard. Well, if you'll get your children to start doing work, I remember even when Brooks was a little teeny thing, everybody had housework, or we called it, what'd you call it?
household maintenance.
Household maintenance. We didn't want to do chores because we thought the word was misused culturally. So we didn't want to make it a chore. We just wanted to maintain the house. Well, little Brooks had a water spray bottle and a little rag, and he'd go spray the dust boards or something like that. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so they're learning from the beginning that this is what you do. You get things done. You work. This doing work to contribute to the home and the family and the house is part of what gives them confidence. It's part of them learning how to direct their will and not be caught constantly in do for me, do for me. I don't feel good. Yes. So what?
I don't feel like it, or it doesn't sound fun to me, or whatever.
Right. So
yeah. So what?
Yeah.
So
well,
what?
we would say we'll work faster then, because then you'd get to go do, the fun thing afterwards. So there's number 5. Number 6, think uniqueness and talents. You always want to be thinking this. You treat your kids the same by treating each one differently. They're all unique. And you want to appreciate and see that uniqueness and help them discover and focus on their talents. I have a son that I think still cannot throw a ball correctly. Just doesn't look right. He does get it somewhere, but it just doesn't look right. I have another son that I don't care where the ball goes. He just throws it so nicely. It's just something fun to watch. The one that can't throw a ball, made a perfect math score on his SAT. That would be part of his talent. So there are things we did to try to encourage that. And out of that has come work and employment, all kinds of things. That's the game. You want to find what they're really good at and help them grow it and direct it. That's what they've been entrusted with. And that's where your talent comes. I mean, look, if someone is, let's take me. I'm 5'6.5", I hope, still. And for me to have a goal of playing in the NBA at any point in my life would have been an opportunity for misery, okay? No telling what time I would have wasted trying to develop that. Now, if I have the talent, it's great. I've got a good friend who was telling me about his son. He's a great football player. He's amazing. I said, he's in high school. Yeah, he's a junior. I said, yeah, parents say this all the time, and maybe he is, but it's really tough to be a great football player in college, much less the pros. And do what you want, but I just have gone through this, so many parents. You don't need to overhope it. Well, that guy's name is Bob Tebow, and his son is Tim Tebow, so that one worked out at least a bit. And if someone has that kind of talent, great. Cultivate it, go for it. They're going to contribute according to their talents. They're not going to contribute or be confident if you're trying to take something they're really, really weak in and make it their strength. You want a weakness not to be in the way, but you really want to develop their talents. The way I like to say it is you want to stretch to your strengths. So you find out what they're really good at and stretch them a little more and stretch them a little more. And you can see magic happen. Number 7, honor their ideas and efforts. Jody, you were kind of saying that a little while ago too. That if they have an idea for something, they have something they want to do, or they try it, there's a lot of kudos in just the effort, the trying. That's part of what builds confidence. You learn. We had kids that did all kinds of things. They like to make movies. One of our sons wrote and got his friends to star in, and then showed it, the forest, showed it in the youth hall to, I don't know, 100, 150 people or something. An hour and a half movie in high school that he and his friends designed and made, and it was pretty good. I think people were crying at the end and all kinds of stuff. So if your child has an idea, maybe it's harebrained, maybe it's not. Look, the way I'd say it is, try to say yes, good point, give it a try. That's what you're looking to do, not saying no, bad point, never happened. You're wanting to try to figure out, how can I encourage you to do that thing? There are times to say no, of course, but what you're looking for is, how can I get to a yes? You want to honor their fresh ideas, even if they're mildly crazy, and their efforts. I remember Trip, as a little guy, started going around the neighborhood selling bean bags to the neighbors. What was that, Jody?
Yeah. He would, I think, even other things, maybe other toys of his or something. But at one point it was bean bags. He was selling.
And he sewed the bean bags. He made them. They're handmade. And I don't know where he got the idea, and he didn't mention it to us. And I'm sure neighbors love Trip, so he probably made some money, or we had to give it back or think it through. But really, that's pretty cool to be entrepreneurial that way. And that's the kind of stuff you'd want to cheer for in a child to grow their confidence. Number 8, teach the magic phrases for learning. There are a couple of these that I like, and you just want to keep using them all the time. One is, I don't know, but I can learn. Teach your kids to say that, to say, I don't know, but I can learn. They want to keep saying, I don't know, but I can learn. And if they get that in their head, that orientation that says, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, or I don't know how to do it, but I can learn how, then they'll get out there and get after it. I think millennials, you'd want to say, I don't know, but I can Google it. It's the same idea. When you think. The other thing is, everything is hard before it's easy, but it's easy once you know how. Get this into the soul of your child to understand that, look, everything is hard before it's easy, but it's easy once you know how. That is magic to them, because you got to understand, yeah, I'm learning this new language or this new thing or this new whatever, and it's not easy. Yeah, it's not supposed to be. But once you master it, it isn't a big deal. Fractions are tough. Yeah, but once you know them, they're not. It's that kind of orientation or game. And so these phrases, at least we found them in our house to be a big deal.
Magic.
Yeah, and in fact, that bottom one still is used in a high school I taught at and helped develop. Someone recently told me, yeah, we have all these phrases of yours that still go around the halls, everybody says, and that's one of them. So those are the phrases. Number 9, teach your kids to set goals. They really need to learn how to set a goal for something and then figure out how to get to it, an objective, a hope, whatever we want to call this. We have a goal-setting course that is designed to do that. I had a lady write me not too long ago about her son who is on the spectrum. He's older than the other kids, if I remember the story correctly. But he would go through the lessons with them. He was going through this goals course, and in going through that goals course, he was inspired enough, without letting the folks know, I think, that he went down and wound up getting a job at Walmart, applied and went through the whole process, and was, working and making some contribution, and his own confidence coming out of, what do I want to do outside this house? And it's not that he won't do other things, but just that kind of initiative overwhelmed that family because they didn't have it in their mind. Well, that's what a goal can do for you. You set it out there and it gets you in motion. And if you can accomplish it, it becomes a basis, well, even the steps on the way, it becomes a basis of your confidence and understanding inside of reality of what you're actually up to. So that is key. And I'll make information available of how you can get the goals course if it interests you. But it's something we found very powerful. Like Brooks said, I mean, this was a great confidence moment for him as a 7 or 8 year old. I showed him on vacation some of the basics of how you set and achieve goals. And Brooks came back to me later. He was a little guy, maybe 8. And he came back and he said, "Daddy, thanks for showing me that." It was about 2 hours later. He said, "Thanks for showing me that." He said, "Now I believe I can do anything." And that's confidence. He knew how to set a goal, set up some steps, and make it happen. A little more to it than that, but that's the idea. Number 10, and finally, you got to brace for the downside. And the downside is someday they won't need you. I know this is tough because you want to be needed. They'll still need you, but not to survive and function and make decisions and stuff like this. This is one of the harder transitions I have. Nobody's calling me for advice, and I've still got plenty of advice. But the fact is they need us to be grandparents. They need us to connect the kids. They're going to need us in challenges and crisis and, the things you do as family. But they're out on their own. They're all graduated, paid through college, buying houses, establishing life, cars, having babies, figuring out what they want to do in life, being involved in church, community, making their mark, their contribution, giving to the world what they've been put together for. And that's actually what you want. It may not feel delightful because we like to keep our babies, but someday they won't need you. If you grow a confident child, and the transition will eventually come around, because the day's coming when you'll need their help. You won't be able to help them. You're too old. You're getting weaker. You're getting frail. This happens to everybody. And as a result, you're going to need their help. They're going to need to be able to take care of you. And that's going to be built in part on some confidence that you installed or instilled in them. So the greater part of courage is having done it before, right? So with all that said, Jody, anything you want to add to this story?
Not to take away from, I think it was number 6 about their unique talents and all. There are some, and this is going to be a duh to everybody, but there are some things that as an adult, as a parent, that your kids need to know how to do. And some things we're all going to learn how to do this. We're all, or in this family, we're all going to learn how to do this. That's not to take away from, what are that child's unique talents, but I think it's good for parents to think through, okay, what is it? And we've talked about this before some, by their leaving here for college or leaving home at 18 or whatever, what is it? What are some of the basic things we would like all our children to be able to handle and do?
Right. So we all need to learn to drive a car, but we don't have to be Richard Petty or whoever's now alive, Johnson or whoever. So that's, legitimate, that honestly, we all need to learn math to a certain level. You got taxes and restaurant bills to not see, to catch mistakes on, and other ways to calculate distances and percentages, and just functionally, math is a very, very powerful tool. It makes you a whole lot smarter than you'd be without it. That doesn't mean that there's not someone with a real talent for math that might take it to an entirely different level. But yeah, there's plenty of minimal stuff that we're supposed to be doing, and minimal skills you need to develop. Doesn't mean you'll be equally strong at everything. Everybody can walk or probably even run, but we're not all, marathoners. So understanding a minimum skill level is one thing, but the confidence is going to come in that combination of a talent that's really developed, but also in being able to do and handle life. That's a big deal. Just the minimum basic stuff.
Right.
So we have a few minutes. The way we started this late, I'll go a little later. If you have questions, learning to swing. Let's see. If you do have questions, let's see what's in here. See the slide. Thank you all for being here. So we're glad to do this. And if you have any questions, type in the Q&A box if you would. I'll scroll down here and see what these are. Falling into this, the kids didn't have friends, so we ended up enrolling part-time private school in sports, making home life stressful, busy, guilty, all driving, cooking. Yeah, so it was related in the conversation. That's great. So, Carly wrote, you can see learning to swing. People, Jody, can you see this on your screen? No, I'm asking, do you see what I see?
No.
Or you just see me?
I just see you.
I just don't know what it shows. So she said, people are surprised how young my kids learn to swing. And it's because when they asked me to push them, I said, no, figure it out. And yeah, and swinging is a good example of something to figure out. Never do for a child what the child can do for themselves. And that's exactly right. So if you have any questions about confidence, in building confidence in your kids, I gave you, I think, a lot of information to think about, but there may be something targeted. If you want to type it in real quick, we would love to answer it. So Valerie says, I have a child who is extra hard on himself for any mistakes, and even when I'm unhappy, he finds a place to blame himself. Can you help me make a shift for him? So this child works hard. He's hard on himself about any mistakes, and even when he says when I'm happy, he finds a place to blame himself. So how would you make that shift, Jody?
I'm sorry, I had a pop-up happen right during part of that, but I think that's that becoming some of the things you talked about, just comfortable with critique, comfortable with failure, and comfortable might not be the right word, but that this is how you learn. Nobody starts with perfect. Nobody is a perfect baseball player from day one, or a perfect ballerina, or a perfect artist, or a perfect writer. And learning is you try, you do something, you look at it, you adjust.
Yeah, that's true. But how do you get that into a child? I mean, you can lecture them and say, oh, don't be that way. Stop it. But getting it into a child that mistakes are not evil, how do you do that? So one of the things that we do in writing is we try to help kids understand that things happen in a sequence of three, that they really are messed up to think otherwise. And it goes from okay to get help to make it great. And so one of the phrases we taught our kids is you can't start with perfect. So we want to get to perfect. We don't want to take that away if they want to, or at least a 98 counts the same as 100. Get there, but you can't start there. So what you have to start with is something else. One of the favorite things I've found in life is getting people to intentionally make a mistake and find out that it doesn't destroy them. So in writing, I like kids to try to write something that doesn't make sense, and I make them really work at it. And you almost never can, because usually when you try to write something that doesn't make sense, it just sounds so cool. You know, it's amazing. Because the way we're structured for language, it's a really difficult thing to do. So Valerie, what I would encourage you to do is really try to help your child understand that wanting the goal of perfection is fine, but we can't start there. And so we have to learn how to make adjustments and tweak it, kind of like artists do. You know, they hit a brush and they back up and look at it and hit another one, hit another one. They may make a mistake, whatever else, but it's not the end of the story. And so learning how to process that, to say, does this mean you failed, or does this mean that you're learning? And so probably even dividing it that way, continually asking, is this a failure or learning? Are you aiming for okay? Or are you aiming for perfect? Let's start with okay. Let's get some help, and let's make it great. So learning this mindset and seeing what they're doing as a process, not an end thing, is part of what helps free them up, quite frankly. And otherwise, some of this is just simply part of growing. I also would encourage you to look for an area where he doesn't get upset with his mistakes. Like if he puts robotics together, or if he does something that he doesn't make mistakes at. I mean, he does make mistakes, but he doesn't freak out. Try to get him to process, what are you thinking there when that doesn't go right, but you're okay. You know, you're shooting baskets and you miss one. You don't seem to get upset about it. You get the ball and shoot again. How is that working in your head? If you can find out how that works in his head, you can translate it to any other area. He just needs to think it through.
Yeah.
Anything else, Joanna?
No, that's good. And I think, you know, even with like the little ones, maybe somebody's a 6-year-old doing soccer. Well, you know, praise the effort, praise the gumption, the get up and go, not just, oh, if they scored us, you know, if they kicked the ball in or whatever, but praising the effort.
Cool. Allison wrote, my senior says he doesn't care whether he participates in a graduation ceremony or not. Not sure if this is a confidence issue, since I've communicated that I don't think he has earned a diploma. Since I have communicated that I don't think he has earned a diploma. Our homeschool evaluator says she will issue him one if he wants one. Since he's over 18, I don't know if it will affect his confidence in launching if he does not graduate. So I'm not sure I understand the process there. I do know that do we have any children that were excited about graduating?
None of ours wanted to, we homeschool all the way up. Nobody wanted to go through a ceremony. We had some options of like with homeschool groups, things like that, but none of them wanted to participate. So that's one area I'm hearing, and that was not a big deal. That was, to me, their decision. But I'm hearing you, actually, is he going to get a high school diploma from that yeah. So I don't.
Right. I mean, going through the seminary, one thing, Jody and I graduated from the University of Alabama, and neither of us went to graduation. It's just 3,000 people and standing up, and it just didn't make sense to us. And so, but we still got diplomas. If he graduates high school, he graduates high school, whether he goes through a ceremony or not. There may be other reasons for it, what it models to the other kids, what mom and dad want him to do, etc.
I mean, we had a friend whose child was presenting, they'd homeschool all the way up, and like senior year, the child ran away from home, and they were 18, so technically the parents couldn't do anything about it, but the mother said, I'm not going to graduate you. I'm not going to in any way tell society, you know, that you finished. So it was going to present a little bit of a problem at some point if she did want to go to college. She was going to have to figure that out because she didn't have a high school diploma.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's probably not a confidence thing. I don't think any of our kids went to graduation. No, Laura did, because I went up and went through it with her.
Oh, college.
Yeah, the others did not do college graduation that I recall.
Not,
And
yeah, they did not do
so,
the ceremonies.
yeah, that's what I mean.
Right.
But it wasn't about a confidence thing. There's something more
Uh-huh.
pragmatic or
It's
practical
just
to it.
very pragmatic. Yeah.
Um, I would suggest, especially if they graduate, it's probably be good to have a party. I thought what the Waltmans did was pretty cool. So they just have a open house, come and go, drop by, you know, see friends, give them a hug, cheer for them.
Yeah.
That was a nice celebration as far as that goes. So, all right, any more questions? She did right. We're not concerned about the ceremony, but not sure what to do about not graduating at all.
Yeah, that's what that she was
So,
asking.
will participate in graduation ceremony or not?
Right.
He doesn't care. But yeah, I mean, it seems like I'm pretty sure I'd want to graduate them because it's going to affect college and other stuff.
That's yeah, that's what she
If they
said.
don't deserve it, I think they have school left to do. I guess if they quit school, that's your own.
That's what she's saying. He's 18. I don't feel, she's saying, I don't feel like he's really deserves a diploma to graduate. But now, he could go take the what's it called?
GED, and that's the way to go. She says he's not motivated to do enough work, and at some point, it's his life. I think if it were me, I would say, here's what would be required for you to graduate. I will graduate you with these things done. Read these books, finish this math thing, whatever it is, whatever would be for graduation, and then he'll say it's his choice. If he says yes, he does it. If he says no, he doesn't do it, and he's going to have to go on in life. And maybe he wakes
Right.
up in the course of time. But by 18, 19 years old, I mean, David had killed Goliath like at 16. And at some point, we're stuck having to allow our kids to, direct their own lives, even if it's mistaken.
Now, and
And
you get into the whole thing though, is he still living at home? Are y'all still supporting him? Some other things like that become issues.
yeah, there's a
Um,
there's a rub.
you know,
So that's just part of the challenges with parenting, and going back and sorting out what maybe you missed out on um, is certainly an issue. Hey, Ginger threw up here. What about overconfidence? And I really had a whole section about overconfidence and humility and presumption and all. And I think that's a legitimate concern. Overconfidence is largely a function of the imagination or pride. It's not based in reality, and sometimes we don't know. We don't know what a person can do, and I would say that's a learning game. And I've seen that. I was talking to a mom who barely got her child into college, not a mid or high tier college, and he's barely gotten through that with great help from friends, or gotten through most of it. And now he's talking about graduate school, and it's like, how'd you get yourself to think that way? But I don't know what he can do or can't do. That would be overconfidence given his history. And yet, if he has a goal that he really wants to get there, I'm not smart enough to know what he can or can't do. We found that with Tripp, with his cerebral palsy. I didn't know what he could or couldn't do. So he decided he wanted to ski. Good luck with that. And he fell down the mountain for 2 days and then finally figured out how to ski on short skis. Had a friend that hung out with him and, picked him up and dusted it off and kept doing it till he figured it out. So overconfidence is an opportunity to learn some humility. So there's a lesson there too. But that, largely is a function of the individual. What is the basis on which you can do it? There were certain programs I got into. Remember, law school is like that. I was very scared to death of whether I would get in or be able to do law school, my insecurity. And yet I looked at people I knew who had graduated. This is just awful. And I went, I'm pretty sure if they could do it, I could do it. And it wasn't an overconfidence thing. It was an assessment in reality of what it must require rather than what I was imagining. But I just say that's always running the danger between overconfidence and underconfidence is always part of the game. And just like driving a car, you're learning how to not go in the ditch on either side of the road. It's just part of the learning. Did you need to
It's
say something?
funny that you said the car thing, because I was thinking a couple of our kids, at least one, I think two, when they started driving, we didn't live on a farm. They didn't drive anything before they were 15, and nothing, tractors or go-karts or anything. So I just can remember one or two of them thinking that it was just going to be a breeze. Of course, everybody just kind of like naturally knew how, and then they began the learning process, and they were like, "Oh, this is not easy." I thought this was going to be really easy. Do you remember that, Fred? And so,
Yeah, they flunked
life will just
their
teach
test. Yeah.
you. Oh
So,
yeah,
but it was
that
a
too.
great lesson. You know, overconfidence is a great opportunity for them to be humbled. And so there's a sick part of me that probably is cheery about that. One last question, then we'll go. Here's one thing Valerie wrote. We do your writing course and have followed guidance with spelling. It really struggles with spelling. It's very hard on himself. He's 10. It kills his confidence when he can't spell in social situations. Yeah, so he needs to learn to spell. And if he's not spelling, he's not catching on to not guessing, or he needs to make a list of his most commonly misspelled things, and y'all need to go over it every day until he gets them. Like if you do 10 a week or 10 a month of his most common misspellings and get them down cold, he'll grow confidence, and if it's 10's too many, do one. What's the word? And get it to where, look, I remember in second grade in Sunday school, I forgot how to spell the. I literally forgot it. I still remember it to this day. And you know what happened out of that? Learn to spell the, and never a problem since. So, the other thing I'd tell him is say, you're just 10 years old. If you can't spell by the time you're 17 or 18, we'll buy a special course for you. But stay with it, and in the writing course, what we're trying to do is train them not to guess. So you just tell them, circle words that you're not sure about, and I'll spell them correct. And so they keep learning. If they don't spell it correctly and don't mark it, they need to look it up and figure it out. But supplement it with a short list of their most commonly misspelled words to really learn them, and then learn a few more and learn a few more. And then you'll get the basic vocabulary of misspellings to go away. But he's just 10, right? Is that okay, Jody?
Yeah.
All right. We love you guys. We're most grateful for the opportunity. We hope this was helpful, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.